Hey, what's going on YouTube? Chuckles again with another World of Warcraft video. Today, I know I'm a little bit late, but I figured we would go into Blackrock Foundry, specifically the LFR version of Blackrock Foundry, and how to handle the encounters and the bosses found within. So the first boss I'm going to talk about is Gruel. You may remember Gruel from Gruel's Lair back in the Burning Crusade. He was a really cool fight, and it was one of the few times where mages were like super effective, because the High King, the boss right before Gruel, you had to have a mage tank, which I thought was like very interesting to have a cloth ranged tank. So anyhow, he's back in Blackrock Foundry, and he has quite a few abilities, some of which are somewhat the same to back in the Burning Crusade times. So the first thing he does is called Inferno Slice. So he does it every like 15 to 20 seconds, somewhere around in there, like 16 seconds. It's his rage bar. When his rage bar hits like full, when he maximum rage or whatever, he uses Inferno Slice against his tank. And what that does is it hits like a Mack truck to begin with, and it does fire damage to all other players like in a cone in front of him, split up. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have like two different groups on either side of him. Tank 1 with a group like at his left, and Tank 2 with another group like at his right. That way when you tank swap, because Inferno Slice is the tank swap mechanic, he hits Inferno Slice on, say, left group, and it splits it among all of those guys. Tank swap, he then Inferno Slices the right group, if that makes any sense. So next he uses Overwhelming Blows. He uses it like regularly throughout the fight, not as much as Inferno Slice, but pretty regularly, I would say. It's a huge like physical damage to the target and everybody within 10 yards. So again, it also applies a stacking debuff that lasts for I think a minute. I think it's a minute, and it causes them to take 10% more damage from more overwhelming blows per stack. So that's another tank swap. So so far we've talked about Inferno Slice and Overwhelming Blows. Like I said, you want Tank 1 with a group on his left, Tank 2 with the other group on his right, split it up, or front and back, however you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. Next he does Petrifying Slam. It happens semi-frequently. It's the one that knocks all the players back, and it slowly petrifies some of them. It lasts for like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that. But what it does is, when you get petrified, you then shatter at the end of it, and you like break, and anybody who's close to you, like I think it's 8 yards, 10 yards, something like that, when you shatter, everybody within 10 yards is going to get a little bit of nature damage, not a whole lot. It's just best that when you get knocked back, you run away and don't be within 10 yards, 8 yards of other people. So lastly, his last ability is called Overhead Smash. It's only during the first phase, which is the phase where it's tank and spank essentially, with the two groups split up. So he casts it, and what it does is it puts a line on the floor in front of him, and after a few seconds, it deals like a high amount of nature damage to anybody playing or standing within that line. So essentially, just stay away from it. It's like fire on the floor. So that's pretty much Gruel. In LFR he was really not that difficult, as long as people didn't get knocked back and then automatically rush on top of each other. So stay spread out when you get knocked back, and make sure there's two different groups with two different tanks so they can mitigate the damage accordingly. So on to Oregor, I guess. Alright, for Oregor, he's a very interesting fight. I found him to be very fun. It's sort of like playing Pac-Man in a way. That's what I kind of compared it to. He has several abilities, and a lot of which can really screw things up if you don't do it correctly. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Acid Maw. This is the stacking dot that he puts on the tank. That's the the tank swap mechanic in this particular fight. I'm not really for sure how many stacks it is, because I haven't personally tanked it just yet. I've only done it on the mage. And then next he has Acid Torrent, which he uses regularly throughout his first phase, and I'll get into the phases. The first phase is essentially just a tank and spank, but he targets a random ranged party member, or raid member I guess you should say, and shoots a cone attack in that direction. So it deals a massive amount of physical damage to the closest player to him, but it does not damage anyone else, like including the person he's targeting. So essentially what you're going to want to do is make sure the tank is the closest one at all times. It can be mitigated, so the more people that are the closest people will split the damage essentially. That's what I was getting at. Next he does Wretched Blackrock. It's a void zone that he places on underneath like a raid member, and they deal a lot of damage and they stay there for quite some time. So if you get chosen and it gets put underneath you, get away from it, and if you see somebody get it put underneath them, don't go stand in it. That would be very bad. Next, Explosive Shard. He does this through phase 1 again, which again is just the stand there tank and spank kind of thing when he's like spitting at you. He throws an Explosive Shard at a raid member. Generally speaking, it's melee, but I have seen it hit ranged people, and it deals like a high amount of damage to any players in a small radius of the shard, and it knocks them back. Like after it hits, I think it's 5 seconds. When it hits the ground, after 5 seconds, the shard then like explodes, and then it deals like I believe it's fire damage, and it stuns anybody who gets hit by it. So essentially, you get chosen to get the shard. He throws the shard down. Like I said, usually in melee, but sometimes it can be ranged. You're going to want to get away from it and stay away from it, and make sure nobody else is standing near it. Last ability he has is Blackrock Barrage. It is interruptible, and he casts it a lot. It does raid-wide damage no matter where you're standing, and it consumes some of his mana, but if you interrupt it, he doesn't lose any mana. But now for the Pac-Man part. So at some point he's going to start rolling, and then he puts a bunch of boxes on the ground, which I thought was really cool. But when he starts rolling, you're going to want to obviously kind of put your camera at a bird's eye view, top down kind of thing, and you're not going to want to be in his path where he's rolling, but the boxes have to be opened, and it takes a little while, so you're going to want to plan for that so you don't get hit by the roll. But I think it's really cool. Like, it's a little maze, and you kind of watch behind you. I felt like Indiana Jones running from the big ball or whatever it is, the big rock ball. I think that's Crusaders of the Last Ark. But at any rate, that's pretty much Oregor. It's a really fun fight. In LFR, it was not hard at all. Even if you get hit by him rolling, it doesn't do much damage. So I think last but not least in this wing is the Blast Furnace, which is a very interesting fight. So let's go ahead and jump right into it next. Alright, last but not least in this particular wing of Blackrock Foundry, which I believe is the first wing, you're going to have Blast Furnace, which is unlike any other fight that I can say that I've done in World of Warcraft. It starts off with a lot of ads in the room, and you can see the Blast Furnace kind of hidden behind like a grate kind of thing, and you can't necessarily engage him until certain parameters are met. So there's going to be ads that are flipping levers on the right and left hand side of the furnace itself. There's going to be like a main mini boss, and then there's several other ads. So let's talk about the ads. The Furnace Engineers, they spawn one at a time, and they're kind of rare. They spawn like every 30 seconds, 45 seconds, something like that. It's not really on a timer. They have 4 major abilities. Electrocution, they use that one the most, and all it does is basically it deals a little bit of nature damage to a randomly targeted raid member, but then it jumps up to 2 other targets within 5 yards. So generally speaking, if it targets a melee person, it's gonna hurt a little bit. Repair is their next ability. It's uninterruptible, which kind of stinks, but they repair a heat regulator, and they heal it for 3% of its maximum health, which is unavoidable, so you kind of have to keep DPS at a high. Next they do Bomb, which essentially just attaches a bomb to a random raid member, and then you go and drop it off. You don't want to detonate it in the raid, obviously, unless you're a hunter or something, you know, because huntards. And then the fourth one is the dropping the bomb itself. It allows you to drop it off of you in away from everybody else. Next ad I want to talk about is the bellows operators. They spawn throughout the first phase when all the ads are up and you can't really necessarily attack the blast furnace itself. They don't need to be tanked. They don't do anything. They only have one ability, which is called loading. And what they do is each time they use it, they increase the Heart of the Mountain's heat level by 2. So the Heart of the Mountain is the actual guy behind the blast furnace, the main boss, I guess. And every so often he kind of AoEs sort of like an arcane explosion, but it's with fire, which is extremely cool. The next ad are the security guards, which spawn quite frequently. They only use one ability, but it's called defense. It's an ability, and they place their shield on the ground, providing protection for all their allies in a small area. It reduces the damage that all the mobs take, so you're going to want to move all of the mobs away from the shield, if that makes sense, because if they stay in there too long, you're going to have a lot of ads up, not a lot of ads dying, and then you're just going to get overwhelmed. So next ad, I believe the last one I need to talk about is Foreman Feldspar. He's kind of the mini boss that stands in front. He's right at the beginning, and he uses 3 abilities. Pyroclasm, which can be interrupted, but it deals high amount of fire damage to random raid members. So it's sort of like a pyroblast. He just targets somebody, shoots it, and boom, blows up, gets hurt. Next is Rupture. He uses it regularly, and what it does is it takes a random raid member, he puts a void zone on the ground underneath them, and if you're standing in it, it hurts you. And then next is the Hot Blooded, which is the fire damage aura that persists as long as Foreman Feldspar is alive. Again, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to kill all of the ads, DPS them down, and then essentially the actual, what is it, the Heart of the Mountain, the Blast Furnace guy, the actual boss, pops out of the grate, and then you're going to want to pick him up, and then you're going to want to kill him. Very interesting fight, a lot of ads to manage, a lot of abilities to watch out for. A lot of stuff happening on screen, but hey, it was pretty simple in LFR. I think we only wiped once the first time I ever did it, and then every week after that I don't think we've wiped once, so it's worked out pretty well. At any rate, I hope you enjoy this LFR wing. The next wing is already out. I'll be doing strategies on it as well, hopefully sooner than this one, so it's not too late. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down in the bottom there, because it really does help my channel grow, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.